Everyone, Bill Nichols here, Bill Nichols TV, bringing you a video today about Part 107 waivers and what waivers have been granted, what you need to do to apply for a waiver if you're looking for an exception to Part 107, your remote pilot certification. And just giving you a good rundown and a great blog post today by Alan Perlman from DronePilotGroundSchool.com. I'm going to jump through that blog post, show you some of the things that he talks about with your waivers getting accepted or declined, and just a quick video today on Part 107 stuff, then updates for you on what's happening in the week to come. All right, everybody, so today let's talk about Part 107 waivers. Since I have been posting these Part 107 videos and just overall with my experience from going through Drone Pilot Ground School to taking the test to passing and some others, one of the more common questions that I've had is, one, am I applying for any waivers? Have I applied for any waivers, and what's the status on them? So to date, I haven't applied for any waivers. I do have some that I'm gonna plan for and that I'm probably in the next 6 months gonna have to apply for, and we'll see if they go through or not. But I wanted to bring you a couple of resources today with some tips on how you apply for waivers, what kind of information you need to have in there, and what has the FAA granted so far. So right now, almost all of the waivers that have been granted have been for daylight operations and flying outside of daylight time. So, that's 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after sunset. Outside of those windows, the vast majority of the 120 or so waivers that have been granted have been for that, among some others. I'm going to put all of these links below in the description so you can go through here and see. So the first place that I want to go to is I'm going to take you to the FAA website and show you where you can go look at existing waivers that have been granted, what they've mostly been for, and we'll jump through one or two of them and show you. So let's go right in here. So we're at the FAA, so FAA.gov, and you go /UAS request waivers, waivers granted. So in here, to apply for a waiver to Part 107, please complete the waiver request form. And basically, you would apply for a waiver if you needed to do something like flying multiple aircraft, flying over people, flying outside of daylight hours, flying in restricted airspace, or in those controlled airspaces like A, B, C, D, or E. So this is what you would apply for a waiver for. You want to give yourself right now about 6 months for these waivers. So if you're having shoots that you're going to need to apply for a waiver for, you want to plan those shoots well ahead of time. Let your clients know that you're going to have to get a waiver if you're going to need to, and then apply for that waiver and have it granted, or have it declined, and then you've got to reapply. So what I've done right here is I've gone through. So if we go to the bottom, there are 140 waivers so far that have been granted. And if we just look through, you've got the date, the expiration date, the company, who it is, and the waiver regulation, and then the status, approval or deny. We're looking at all the ones that have been granted. So if you look here, almost all of these, daylight operation, operation of multiple unmanned aircraft, and it gives you the sections of Part 107 that they're getting a waiver for. So daylight operation is FAA Part 107.29, and they're getting an exception to that part of the regulation. So if we go through almost all of these, here's operation of unmanned aircraft, daylight operation, multiple unmanned aircraft, so multiple drones, multiples, daylight, visual line of sight, and visual observer. So this company, Precision Hawk Inc., Thomas Wan, they had one approved. So let's just pop into an application or into the grant and show you what's being provided here when you get this. So here's the certificate of waiver that you get. So you would carry this with you during your shoot. And if anybody had a question about it, whether there's an authority that came by or something, you could show them this waiver and that you're operating in accordance with this waiver that's been granted and the restrictions or the stipulations that have been applied in this waiver. So it basically says that this has been, here's the address. This certificate is issued for operations specifically described in here. So the waived regulations by section and title, they're waiving 107.31 and 107.33. So for VLOS and a visual observer. So basically in here, they've got a bunch of pages, and so they go through, they said that they've reviewed the application, and here's what's being waived. And if you go through, they will have the special provisions. So they tell you what you can operate, what you can do under the subject of this waiver. And so they've got all the pieces here, and then that's your basic certificate of waiver. So you would print this, take it with you, maybe keep one electronically so that you would have it on you during a shoot. So 140, right now there aren't any that have been applied for or that at least have been granted for flying in controlled airspace. So I do have a shoot coming up next year. It was going to be earlier this year because up until now, previously you could, if you were Part 333 or you're Part 107, you could call up the control tower and get access to controlled airspace by letting a control tower know, and if they granted it, great. Now that no longer happens. Now you've got to go through this formal waiver process. And the FAA at Interdrone talked about this, and that it's going to become a lot more mainstreamed, and that they are going to provide these applications here so that people can see what has worked, and if they have a very similar one, they can basically copy an application, replace with their information, submit it, and then hopefully the granting process will go quicker. So if you need to apply for one, you go to this waiver request form here, and we'll just jump into it really fast and go through it. So they have that you've got these two instructions, the performance-based standards and the waiver airspace authorization instructions. And they basically have this form. You have your responsible person, mailing address, who is the remote pilot, what's the airman certificate number, so you get that when you pass your 107. Then you go onto IACRA, create a login, upload your test result, your test exam number there. They download it, then they go through the FAA, they go through the process, and then you get your airman certificate number. Your SUAS, you need to have the make, model, and the aircraft registration number. So you need to have the registered aircraft that this waiver is being tied to, and you can add multiples if there are going to be multiples. And then you have your waiver or your airspace authorizations that you're looking for here. So if you're looking to fly in, say, Class C airspace, in an area and trying to get off authorization there, you would check 107.41. Your start date, your start time, your end date, your end time, local time zone, proposed area of operations, the height that you're going to fly, what is the maximum altitude that you're going to fly, and then if the waiver is site specific, you can put the center point of the site here, and then what is the radius from that, and they basically have it in less than 1 nautical mile, 1 to 5 or something like that. So less than 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3. What is the nearest airport, class of airspace, and they have you ask a bunch of questions, then you submit this. And then you wait, and you see if you're granted or not. So that is the waiver process and what has been granted so far. So you can go right to this link, which is down below, and view any of the granted waivers so far, see what people have written, what companies have written, what have they got approval for, and then maybe you need one for a similar type thing, and you can use some of the information there. These applications, these waivers, will talk about how they're going to mitigate the risk that's associated with bypassing that section of the regulation. So really good information in here. I want to jump into this blog post really quick. Alan Perlman, he's the creator of DronePilotGroundSchool.com. He's got over 2,000 students, over a 99% pass rate. It's what I use to pass. He's wrote this really, really great blog post about your airspace authorizations. Are they getting turned down, and here's why. And he jumps through in here and talks about the information that you would want to put into your waiver, your waiver request, and the type of stuff that the FAA is looking for, and what to make sure that you hit so that you have a better chance of getting your airspace authorization or your waiver granted. So he's got a really great blog post here. Alan's constantly publishing stuff on the site. And on top of this, he recently made an addition to DronePilotGroundSchool.com, which I'll go into really quick. He added these 4 bonus interviews. So really an inside look at running an aerial business. And he had an interview with a drone lawyer about key legal considerations for starting a drone business, using drones to do real estate marketing, understanding the drone liability and hull insurance, so insuring your SUAS, and then transitioning from part-time to full-time aerial services. So 4 really great interviews. I recommend that you go through them. If you're part of DronePilotGroundSchool.com, they're in your course, so go through them. And if you're not, then check out DronePilotGroundSchool.com. It is what I recommend to go through. It's what I used. It's what I passed with. Link down below with $50 off. It's a really good information here. I appreciate the questions around waivers, and it showed me I probably needed to make a video on this. Coming up next week, so today, coming in, I got a GoPro Karma that's getting here. So I've got, next week is going to be a pretty GoPro heavy week. Going to have the Karma, and I am going to have the Karma up against a Phantom 4, maybe up against a Typhoon H, but show you the video difference between the Karma and the Phantom 4. What does the quality look like? I actually expect the quality to be really good because the GoPro Hero 5 is a great camera. I've got one of those that I'm doing some comparisons on against the Hero 4 series. I'm doing some stuff on a gimbal, electronic stabilization, whatnot. That'll be out next week. Also next week, a good video out about the iPhone 7 Plus versus the Google Pixel and the video quality. So I'm going to shoot part of a video like this with each of them and show you some different videos, from time-lapse videos to some outdoor scenery. My takes on the iPhone 7 versus the Google Pixel. Google Pixel's outstanding camera-wise, phone-wise, but camera-wise, it's amazing. So next week, a lot of videos on the GoPro 5, the Karma versus the Phantom 4, the Google Pixel. So look for those. It's gonna be a fun week next week. videos at least Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, if not every day next week, so stay tuned. If you haven't yet subscribed, giving away that bag in less than 100 subscribers now. We'll be at 7,500. So look over here, giving away that CamSafe Z14 anti-theft bag. And guys, thanks so much for watching. You have an awesome weekend. You keep watching. I'll keep making videos. Thanks a lot. Everyone, Bill Nichols here. Today I want to bring you some news that's happening in the drone industry, particularly for people that are looking to fly their drones for commercial purposes, so for work or business. Previously, and I've had a lot of questions around the FAA 333 exemption. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I'll tell you some basics that I know. I applied for my FAA 333 exemption, and with that, a lot of people have thought that once you get that exemption, that you could fly your drone for commercial purposes. You can if you're a pilot, and you're flying within the rules that have been established, but if you're not a pilot, an actual private pilot or sport pilot, or have a pilot, you're a certified airman through the FAA, you're not flying your drone for commercial purposes. Your company could receive an FAA 333 exemption and you could hire a pilot in command, but you can't be the pilot in command. So there's a lot of confusion around that. And that is one of those things where I thought that was excessive, but I was going through the point of deciding to go to flight school and get my private pilot license just so I could do that. And then I started hearing about Part 107 a few months back, or late last year. So originally Part 107 was going to be official in spring of this year, or late spring of this year. They just announced it today, and they threw down the guidelines of the rules. So this is a quick video. I'm going to go over Part 107 and what it means. And basically what they've done is that they've created a small class UAS rule. That's what the Part 107 is. And with that, they've launched some guidelines on what you need to be if you want to fly an unmanned aerial system for fun, for work. How do you become a pilot? And then apply to a waiver to Part 107. So I'm going to step through some basics really quick today on this, show you what it means. It's actually very reasonable. I don't know that there are fees that have been established yet. I'll need to look that up. But if let's just jump right into it. So I'm going to start with, I've gone to the FAA.gov site, gone to unmanned aerial systems, getting started in flying for work or business. So the instructions on this page, like they've said, they will become effective in August. So there's a 60-day period after they've made this announcement. After that 60 days, they have the Part 107 will go into effect. So basically your pilot requirements, you've got to be 16 years old. You have to pass an initial aeronautical knowledge test at an FAA-approved knowledge testing center, and then must be vetted by the TSA. People who already hold a pilot's certificate issued under 14 CFR Part 61, and they've completed a flight review within the previous 2 years, can complete a Part 107 online training course, and they've got the link there. So there is going to be, if you look on the right here, top tasks, you still register your drone, so you should be registering your drone now if you're out flying it. Every single one needs to be registered. It's only $5. Do it, label your drone, and do that. Becoming a UAS pilot, so that's coming soon, and then applying for a waiver. So if we look at the aircraft requirements, they need to be under 55 pounds. They have to be registered. Class G airspace. I'm not going to go into the details of that. I've read through what Class G is. You can look up on Wikipedia, everywhere else. But I'm not going to go into the details there right now. Must fly under 400 feet. Must fly during the day. Must fly at or below 100 miles an hour. Yield right away to manned aircraft. So really basic safety rules. Must not fly over people. Must not fly from a moving vehicle. Now this is there are some pieces around the moving vehicle where it said if you're in sparsely populated areas, that's okay, but you can't fly from another craft. So let's go into the Part 107 summary. So these are the basic rules, and what I've done is I've gone to becoming a pilot. So they have becoming a pilot here, and then to become a pilot, you must be at least 16 years old, read, speak, and write, and understand English. Exceptions may be made. Be in physical and mental health condition to safely operate a small UAS, and pass the initial aeronautical knowledge exam at an FAA-approved testing center. I plan on doing this the day that it's available so that I can be up to par and make sure that I'm operating my craft when I'm doing it for commercial purposes under the rules. So the application process, basically schedule an appointment with the training center, with the knowledge testing center, and they have a list. Pass the initial nautical test. It has the test areas that include regulations, airspace classifications, weather sources, small unmanned aircraft loading and performance, a bunch of other pieces. Complete FAA Form 871013 for remote pilot certification. And then a confirmation email will be sent when an applicant has completed the TSA security background check. A permanent remote pilot certificate will be sent via mail once all other FAA internal processing is complete. And so those are your steps. I'm going to put all of these links down below in the description. Then let's go over to the summary, because the summary's got basically everything that's in the 107, at a high level. So the craft has to be less than 55 pounds. Visual line of sight only. So the unmanned aircraft must remain within visual line of sight of the remote pilot in command and the person manipulating the flight controls of the small UAS. So this is key, because I get asked all the time, oh, can it go 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles, 5 miles? And I've said many times, that's not applicable. Now, I did in a remote area, took my Phantom out to see what the distance test was. I did also put a caveat out there that I would likely never fly it that far. So I took it out 2 miles, brought it back. I don't really ever fly my drone now without it being in line of sight. I think that it's a safety hazard, especially with the Phantom. You have blades that are spinning in sport mode at 8,000, 9,000 RPMs. When you have an Inspire that weighs much more, or something even larger, you have the real opportunity to create, damage and to injure people, potentially causing fatal injuries. So, safety first, and you want to make sure that that is within line of sight so that you always have, that view of it. At all times, a small unmanned aircraft must remain close enough to the remote pilot in command and the person manipulating those flight controls for those people to be capable of seeing the aircraft with vision and not with FPV. So not any other device besides corrective lenses. They may not operate over any persons not directly participating in the operation, and they can't be under a covered structure and not inside a covered stationary vehicle. So I guess you cannot fly your drone inside of your RV, your minivan. You can't fly it inside of your Prius. Daylight only operations. Now this is actually pretty reasonable, or civil twilight. So you can go 30 minutes before sunrise and 30 minutes after sunset with appropriate anti-collision lighting. So it'll be interesting. We'll have to see if the lights that are on the Inspire and the lights that are on the Phantom, if that qualifies as anti-collision lighting, if it's bright enough. Yield right of way to other aircraft. May use a visual observer, but it's not required. The first-person view camera cannot satisfy see and avoid requirements, but it can be used as long as the see and avoid requirements are met in other ways. Max ground speed of 100 miles an hour. Maximum altitude 400 feet above ground level. Originally, Part 107, it looked like it was going to be 500 feet above, but 400 feet's fine. Weather visibility of 3 miles from the control station, so from where you are. Operations in Class B, C, D, and E airspace are allowed with air traffic controller permission. Operation in Class G airspace are allowed without air traffic controller permission. No person may act as a remote pilot in command or visual observer for more than one unmanned aircraft operation at one time. No operations from a moving aircraft, so you can't be in a helicopter operating your drone. No operations from a moving vehicle unless the operation is over a sparsely populated area. So I think if you were say using the Typhoon with the Wizard, the Typhoon H, and you had that Wizard in your backpack and you had it following you, or you were mountain biking, or you're doing a follow me video or something in a sparsely populated area, we'll have to look and see if there's an official definition of sparsely populated, if that's so many people per square mile or not. No careless or reckless operations. No carriage of hazardous materials. Requires a pre-flight inspection by the remote pilot. You can't operate it if you have sufficient reason to know of any physical or mental conditions that would keep you from operating it safely. And then there's just some basic others. I'm not going to go through all the others, but there's some interesting ones, like external load operations are allowed if the object being carried by the unmanned aircraft is securely attached. It does not adversely affect the flight characteristics. This one clause right here, this is going to open up Amazon, UPS, FedEx, Domino's, McDonald's to, I can just imagine, I don't know right now, but in the next few years we could see the airspace below 400 feet with some Domino's drones delivering pizza. I know that Amazon is going to be all over this. Transportation of property for compensation or hire allowed, provided that the aircraft, including its attached systems, payload, and cargo, weigh less than 55 pounds. The flight's conducted within visual line of sight, not from a moving vehicle. So that's interesting. That kind of takes out the other one up above. The flight occurs wholly within the bounds of a state and does not involve transport between Hawaii and another place in Hawaii through airspace outside Hawaii, etc. Remote piloting command. Establish a remote piloting command. A person must either hold a remote pilot airman certificate. So if there are any pilots out there, I believe that this remote pilot airman certificate is brand new and doesn't currently exist. So the person operating the drone must either hold a remote pilot airman certificate or be under the direct supervision of someone that does, so you can have remote pilot in command. So that's way different than FAA 333. With that, it required that the pilot in command was an actual pilot, a certified airman through the FAA. There's the qualifications for a remote pilot certificate. And then a Part 61 certificate holders may obtain. So I think that's your Part 61. I think that's your airman. I'm not positive, so don't blast me on there. And then until international standards are developed, foreign certificated UAS pilots will be required to obtain an FAA issued remote pilot certificate. Remote pilot must. So here's a couple of things. Remote piloting command must make available to the FAA the drone for inspection or testing and any associated documents records. Report to the FAA within 10 days of any operation that results in at least serious injury, loss of consciousness, or property damage of $500. Conduct a pre-flight inspection to include specific aircraft and control systems. Ensure that the UAS complies with the existing registration requirements. Remote piloting command may deviate from the requirements of this rule in response to an in-flight emergency. An FAA airworthiness certification is not required, but you must conduct a pre-flight check of the small UAS of the drone. Part 107 does not apply to model aircraft. That has the public law that's listed there in Section 336. And that is your basic summary. So then over here, becoming a pilot, we've got the pieces over here that they're talking about with becoming a pilot and then applying for a waiver. And then one thing that I didn't know that the FAA has, now this app has really low ratings on the App Store, but they have this Before You Fly smartphone app. If you haven't seen this, it's worth checking out. I downloaded to my iPhone and didn't realize that I was in an area where there was a small airport called the Saddleback Exchange that was near my place, 3.6 miles away, and that if I wanted to fly here, I needed to notify air traffic control for that. That's really interesting. So I'll be doing that in the future. But that's it, guys. I wanted to bring you a quick update on Part 107. So if you're looking to fly commercially, I've seen a lot of drone schools out there that are saying, oh, we'll issue you a flight certificate. I'm not going to name one, but there's one that's advertising on Facebook right now. And with them, they say that you will be recognized as a pilot within their network. That doesn't mean anything. Pay attention to what the FAA is doing. It's pretty simple to step through if you look at it. You've got Part 107 now that's laying out pretty clear rules for what you need to do. And I hope that they are really going to establish good knowledge and testing in this aeronautical knowledge test. And that's it. So what do you think of it? Let me know below. If you have any questions, let me know. I am going to look in getting together with somebody that's well versed in drone law, specifically about this and what this means going forward and what people should look out for. So look out for that in the coming future. And other than that, I'm just getting ready for my road trip out to Moab and back. So I'll be posting every day during that trip with probably some vlogging during the trip. And then so you can see some behind the scenes stuff of shooting and then some other pieces that I'm doing. So thanks a lot for watching today. You keep watching. I'll keep making videos. And I'll talk to you soon.